The scorching Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his rifle scope for the third time that morning. His SEAL team had been positioned on the ridgeline for over 6 hours, conducting surveillance on a suspected Taliban compound nestled in the valley below. The mission was routine reconnaissance, but in Afghanistan, routine could turn deadly in seconds. Rodriguez glanced at his watch and then at the woman crouched beside him, her medical bag secured tightly to her back. Doctor, Sarah Chen had been assigned to their unit 3 weeks ago as a civilian contractor, a field medic with impressive credentials from Johns Hopkins. What struck him most wasn't her medical expertise, but her unusual composure under pressure. While other civilian contractors often seemed nervous during operations, Chen moved with a confidence that reminded him of seasoned military personnel. The radio crackled softly in Rodriguez's earpiece. Alpha Team, this is base. We've got movement in Sector 7. Adjust your position and maintain observation. The team leader, Lieutenant Commander Jake Thompson, acknowledged the transmission with a series of hand signals that sent the 8-man team into practiced motion. Chen moved with them seamlessly, never needing guidance on where to position herself or how to maintain noise discipline. Rodriguez noticed she instinctively chose cover that provided both protection and quick access to any team member who might need medical attention. Her movements were too precise, too tactical for a civilian doctor, even one with field experience. As they repositioned along the ridge, the unmistakable crack of sniper fire echoed across the valley. The bullet struck the rocks inches from Petty Officer First Class David Park's head, sending limestone fragments flying. "Sniper! Take cover!" Thompson shouted, but his words were immediately drowned out by the thunderous roar of automatic weapons fire erupting from multiple positions in the compound below. The SEAL team found themselves pinned down behind inadequate cover as bullets whined overhead and struck the rocks around them with metallic pings. Rodriguez could see muzzle flashes from at least 4 different positions in the compound. They had walked into a carefully orchestrated ambush. "Park's hit," Petty Officer Second Class Mike Stevens called out. Rodriguez looked over to see Park clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. The sniper's shot had found its mark after all, clipping Park's collarbone and sending him sprawling behind a boulder. Without hesitation, Chen low-crawled across 15 feet of exposed ground under heavy fire to reach the wounded SEAL. Rodriguez watched in amazement as she moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had done this countless times before. She didn't flinch when bullets struck the rocks above her head, showering her with debris. "How bad?" Thompson called out, trying to coordinate their response while keeping his head down. Chen was already working on Park, her hands moving with surgical precision as she assessed the wound. "Through and through. Missed the major vessels. He'll live, but he needs evacuation within 2 hours, or he'll go into shock from blood loss." The radio crackled again. "Alpha Team, be advised. Extract is not available for another 4 hours. Weather front moving in. Birds are grounded. We have it be now. We have it be now. We have it be now," Thompson cursed under his breath. 4 hours was too long with Park bleeding and the enemy having their position zeroed in. They needed to move, but first they had to break contact with an enemy that seemed to know exactly where they were. Chen finished stabilizing Park's shoulder with quick, efficient movements that spoke of extensive battlefield experience. As she worked, Rodriguez noticed something that made him look twice. On her left forearm, partially hidden by her sleeve, was the edge of what appeared to be a military tattoo. When she reached for supplies from her pack, her sleeve rode up slightly, revealing more of the design. It looked like a special operations insignia, but Rodriguez couldn't make out the details. "Chen, can you keep him stable for 4 hours?" Thompson asked. "Negative. He needs blood replacement therapy and surgical intervention. 2 hours maximum before he's in serious trouble." Her voice carried an authority that made Thompson pause. This wasn't the tentative response of a civilian contractor. This was the assessment of someone accustomed to making life or death decisions under fire. Suddenly, the firing from below intensified. Rodriguez counted at least 8 separate weapon signatures now. They were badly outnumbered, and in an increasingly desperate situation. The enemy seemed content to keep them pinned while they bled Park dry. Chen checked her watch and looked at the sun's position. Lieutenant Commander, what's our exact grid coordinate? Thompson gave her their position, wondering why a medic needed tactical information. Chen was quiet for a moment, apparently calculating something. Then she reached into her pack and pulled out what appeared to be a standard medical radio. But Rodriguez noticed it had features he'd never seen on civilian equipment. This is Nightingale requesting immediate priority. Medevac at grid 37486219. She spoke into the radio with the crisp precision of military communications. Thompson stared at her. That's not a medical frequency. Chen ignored him and continued. Authentication Sierra Whiskey 77. I have one urgent surgical, multiple personnel under effective enemy fire. Request immediate air support and extraction. The radio was silent for several seconds. Then a voice responded that made every SEAL in the team stop what they were doing and listen. Nightingale, this is Hammer 6-1. Authentication confirmed. Air support en route. ETA, 12 minutes. Extraction birds, launching now. Maintain position and mark your location with red smoke. Rodriguez looked at Thompson, who was staring at Chen with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Military aircraft didn't respond to civilian medical requests. They especially didn't respond that quickly to unscheduled emergency calls. And they definitely didn't use special authentication codes that somehow this field medic possessed. Chen calmly returned the radio to her pack and continued monitoring Park's vital signs. She acted as if nothing unusual had happened, but the entire dynamic of their situation had shifted. Help was coming, and it was coming fast because of a civilian contractor who apparently had access to military channels that even their unit commander would have difficulty reaching. The enemy fire continued to rain down on their position, but now it felt different. Instead of being trapped with limited options, they were now simply waiting for rescue. The change in their tactical situation was entirely due to Dr. Sarah Chen, who continued to work on Park as if calling in airstrikes was part of her standard medical training. Rodriguez studied Chen more carefully as she worked. Her movements were economical and purposeful, never wasted. When she needed to adjust her position to avoid incoming fire, she moved like someone with extensive tactical training. Her breathing was controlled, her hands steady. This was not the behavior of a civilian under their first enemy fire. As the minutes ticked by, Rodriguez began to piece together what he was observing. The tactical movement, the military radio, the authentication codes, the confident medical work under fire, and most telling of all, the complete lack of fear or surprise at their situation. Dr. Sarah Chen was not what she appeared to be. The sound of approaching aircraft began to echo off the valley walls, growing steadily louder. Chen looked up at Thompson. When the birds get here, we need to move fast. Park's condition is stable, but barely. Any delay, and we lose him. Thompson nodded, but his eyes never left Chen's face. Rodriguez could see the questions forming in his commander's mind. The same questions that were racing through his own thoughts. Who was this woman, really? And why was she operating under cover with their SEAL team? The thunderous roar of Apache helicopters filled the valley as two AH-64 seconds swept in low and fast. Their 30mm chain guns already spitting fire at the Taliban positions below. The precision of their attack was surgical, hitting exactly the right targets while avoiding any danger to the SEAL team's position. Rodriguez had seen many air support operations, but this level of coordination usually required extensive pre-planning and detailed target briefings. Chen had somehow arranged all of this with a single radio call. As the Apaches suppressed the enemy fire, two Black Hawks appeared over the ridge, moving in perfect formation. The lead helicopter settled into a landing zone that Chen had identified with her red smoke grenade, while the second bird circled in an overwatch pattern. "Let's move," Thompson shouted over the rotor wash. The team bounded toward the helicopters in tactical formation, with Rodriguez and Stevens carrying the wounded Park between them. Chen stayed close to her patient, monitoring his condition even as they ran across the rocky terrain under the protection of the circling gunships. As they approached the lead Black Hawk, Rodriguez noticed something that made him stumble slightly. The crew chief who jumped out to help them load Park was wearing a patch that Rodriguez recognized but had never seen outside of very specific military units. It was the distinctive insignia of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, an elite helicopter unit that primarily supported the most classified special operations missions. Regular SEAL teams didn't get Night Stalker support for routine medical evacuations. Hell, most SEAL teams couldn't even request Night Stalker support without going through multiple levels of command approval. Yet here they were, loading Park onto a 160th bird that had appeared within minutes of Chen's radio call. Once they were airborne, Rodriguez found himself sitting across from Chen in the helicopter's crew compartment. Over the noise of the rotors, he watched her continue working on Park with the same calm professionalism she had shown throughout the firefight. But now, in the better lighting of the aircraft's interior, he could see more details that had been hidden on the ground. The tattoo on her forearm was indeed a special operations insignia, but it wasn't one Rodriguez immediately recognized. It appeared to be a medical caduceus symbol surrounded by wings, with text underneath that he couldn't quite make out. More telling was the way she handled the helicopter's advanced medical equipment. She operated the sophisticated monitoring devices with the familiarity of someone who had used them many times before, adjusting settings and interpreting readings with expertise that went far beyond standard civilian emergency medicine. The crew chief leaned over to check on Park's condition. When Chen gave him a status report, Rodriguez noticed they communicated with the shorthand efficiency of people who had worked together before. The crew chief nodded at her assessment and relayed information to the pilots, using terminology that was definitely not standard medical procedure. 20 minutes into the flight, Thompson moved forward to sit beside Rodriguez. His expression was grim, and Rodriguez could see the questions and suspicions that had been building throughout the day. "You notice anything unusual about our medic?" Thompson asked, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. Rodriguez nodded. "Few things don't add up, sir." Thompson was quiet for a moment, watching Chen work. "That radio call she made. I've been in special operations for 12 years, and I've never seen anyone get that kind of response that fast. The authentication code she used is classified higher than my clearance level." Before Rodriguez could respond, the crew chief approached them. "Lieutenant Commander, we're diverting to Bagram. Orders came down from SOCOM while we were en route. Your medic is to report immediately upon landing." Thompson looked puzzled. "Report to whom?" The crew chief glanced at Chen, who was still focused on her patient. "Above my pay grade, sir. All I know is the orders came from pretty high up the chain." When they landed at Bagram Air Base, Rodriguez expected the usual medical evacuation procedures. Instead, Park was immediately transferred to a waiting surgical team while 3 men in civilian clothes approached their helicopter. They weren't medical personnel. Their bearing, haircuts, and the way they scanned their surroundings marked them unmistakably as intelligence operatives. The lead man, a tall figure with graying hair and sharp eyes, walked directly to Chen. "Dr. Chen, we need to debrief. Now." Chen looked at Thompson and then back at the intelligence officer. Rodriguez could see her weighing options, calculating something in her mind. Finally, she nodded. "Give me 5 minutes to transfer my patient care notes." As she gathered her equipment, Rodriguez noticed the intelligence officers positioning themselves to prevent the SEAL team from overhearing whatever conversation was about to take place. This was not standard procedure for a civilian contractor medical emergency. Thompson stepped forward. "Excuse me, but Dr. Chen is attached to my unit. If there's a debrief required, I should be present." The lead intelligence officer looked at Thompson with the kind of expression that ended careers. "Lieutenant Commander, Dr. Chen's attachment to your unit was temporary and is now concluded. Your team will receive new medical support effective immediately." The dismissal was clear and non-negotiable. Thompson's jaw tightened, but he recognized when he was outranked, even by people who weren't wearing uniforms. Chen finished packing her gear and approached the SEAL team. For the first time since Rodriguez had known her, she seemed uncertain, almost hesitant. "Gentlemen, it's been an honor working with you." She looked directly at Thompson. "Your team is exceptional, and it was a privilege to serve alongside you." Thompson studied her face. "Dr. Chen, I don't know who you really are, but thank you. You saved Park's life today, and probably all of ours. Chen nodded but didn't respond. She turned to follow the intelligence officers, but Rodriguez called out to her. Hey Doc, that tattoo on your arm, what unit? Chen paused and looked back at him. For a moment, Rodriguez thought she might actually answer. Then she smiled slightly. Take care of yourselves out there, Sergeant. As she walked away with the intelligence officers, Rodriguez noticed something he had missed before. Chen's gait had a barely perceptible favor to her left leg, the kind of slight limp that came from old injuries, combat injuries, the kind that special operations personnel sometimes carried as permanent reminders of missions that officially never happened. Thompson gathered his team, and they began the process of checking their equipment and preparing for transport back to their forward operating base. But Rodriguez couldn't stop thinking about the events of the day. The tactical proficiency, the radio capabilities, the instant air support, the intelligence debrief, and most puzzling of all, the way Chen had seemed to know exactly how military operations worked at levels far above what any civilian contractor should understand. Later that evening, back at their base, Rodriguez was cleaning his rifle when Thompson approached him. Rodriguez, I did some checking on Dr. Chen. Rodriguez looked up. And? Thompson's expression was troubled. Her personnel file is classified above my level. I couldn't even access basic information about her background or how she came to be assigned to our unit. Rodriguez set down his rifle. That's unusual for a civilian contractor. Very unusual. I also checked on Park's condition. He's going to be fine. But the surgeon who operated on him made an interesting comment. He said Chen's field treatment was some of the best battlefield medicine he'd ever seen. He asked where she trained. Said her techniques were consistent with military special operations medical training. Thompson paused, looking out at the Afghan landscape visible through the tent opening. Rodriguez, I've been thinking about everything that happened today. The way she moved, the way she handled that radio, the response we got from assets I can't even access normally. I think Dr. Sarah Chen wasn't just a civilian contractor attached to our unit. Rodriguez had reached the same conclusion. What do you think she was? Thompson was quiet for a long moment. I think she was one of us. Special operations. But I think whatever unit she came from operates at a level that makes SEAL teams look like regular infantry. The implications of that statement hung in the air between them. If Thompson was right, then Chen had been operating under deep cover with their unit, for reasons that went far beyond providing medical support. She had been watching them, evaluating them, or possibly protecting them from threats they weren't even aware existed. Rodriguez thought about the precision of the air support that had arrived so quickly, the level of coordination required to make that happen, and the intelligence officers who had whisked Chen away for immediate debriefing. Whatever operation she had really been conducting, it was now complete. As he finished cleaning his rifle, Rodriguez realized he would probably never know the truth about Dr. Sarah Chen or why she had been assigned to their team, but he was certain of one thing. Their lives had been in the hands of someone far more dangerous and capable than any of them had realized, and they were all still alive because of it. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez was seated in a secured briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California. He had been called in for what his commanding officer described as a routine debrief regarding past operations, but nothing about the meeting felt routine. The room was equipped with signal-blocking technology, and the two men sitting across from him were not from his normal chain of command. The older of the two men introduced himself as Colonel James Mitchell, though Rodriguez suspected that wasn't his real name. The younger man remained nameless, taking notes on a tablet that Rodriguez was certain contained no standard military software. Sergeant Rodriguez, we need to discuss your experiences with Dr. Sarah Chen during Operation Desert Hawk last year. Mitchell's voice carried the tone of someone accustomed to asking questions that people answered completely and truthfully. Rodriguez had wondered if this day would come. In the months since Afghanistan, he had researched everything he could find about Chen, but it was as if she had never existed. No medical school records, no previous military contractor assignments, no digital footprint of any kind. The woman who had saved their lives had vanished as completely as if she had been a ghost. Sir, what would you like to know? Mitchell opened a thick file folder. Everything. Start from when she was first assigned to your team. Rodriguez recounted the events, starting with Chen's arrival at their forward operating base 3 weeks before the ambush. He described her unusual tactical awareness, her seamless integration with their operational procedures, and her apparent familiarity with classified radio frequencies and authentication protocols. As he spoke, Rodriguez noticed the younger man's reactions. Certain details seemed to surprise him, while others prompted him to make specific notes. When Rodriguez described Chen's radio call that had brought the immediate air support, both men exchanged glances that suggested they knew more about that incident than they were admitting. Sergeant, in your professional opinion, what was Dr. Chen's actual background? Mitchell asked. Rodriguez had prepared for this question. Sir, based on her tactical proficiency, her medical capabilities under fire, and her access to classified military assets, I believe she was active-duty special operations personnel operating under civilian cover. The younger man looked up from his tablet. What made you reach that conclusion? Rodriguez detailed his observations. The military tattoo, the familiarity with advanced helicopter medical equipment, the practiced way she moved under fire, and most significantly, the immediate response she had received when calling for emergency support. Mitchell nodded slowly. Sergeant, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Dr. Sarah Chen is a major in the Army's intelligence support activity, assigned to a unit that doesn't officially exist. Her real name is Sarah Chen, but everything else about her background that you were told was fabricated for operational security. Rodriguez felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The intelligence support activity was one of the most secretive units in the military, conducting operations so classified that most special operations personnel never even learned of their existence. Her assignment to your team was not coincidental, Mitchell continued. Intelligence indicated that your unit had been specifically targeted by a Taliban cell that had been tracking SEAL operations in your area for months. Dr. Chen was inserted to provide both medical support and protective surveillance. The younger man pulled up a photograph on his tablet and showed it to Rodriguez. It was a picture of the Taliban compound they had been observing the day of the ambush. But this photo had been taken from a different angle and showed details that hadn't been visible from their position. Dr. Chen had been conducting reconnaissance on this facility for 2 weeks before your team arrived. She knew it was a trap. Rodriguez stared at the photograph. She knew we were walking into an ambush? Mitchell nodded. She had identified at least 12 enemy combatants positioned around the compound, including 3 sniper teams. Her mission was to extract your team before you triggered the ambush. But the timeline moved faster than anticipated. Rodriguez remembered Chen's unusual behavior that morning. How she had seemed more alert than usual, checking her watch repeatedly and positioning herself strategically throughout their movement. When it became clear that extraction wasn't possible without compromising her cover, she made the decision to call in the air support directly. That decision saved your lives, but it also ended her operational effectiveness in that theater. The implications of Mitchell's words were staggering. Chen had sacrificed her own mission to save their team, knowing it would blow her cover and end whatever larger operation she had been conducting. What happened to her after Bagram? Rodriguez asked. The younger man answered this time. Major Chen was immediately extracted and has since been assigned to a different operational area. Her work in Afghanistan was concluded successfully, despite the complications. Mitchell closed the file folder. Sergeant Rodriguez, the reason we're having this conversation is that Major Chen specifically requested that you and your team be informed of the truth about her assignment. She felt you deserved to know that your suspicions were correct, and that her actions were not those of a civilian contractor, but of a fellow service member. Rodriguez felt a mixture of gratitude and amazement. Even after her extraction, Chen had thought about their team and wanted them to understand what had really happened. She also wanted you to know that working with your team was one of the highlights of her military career. Your unit's professionalism and tactical capabilities impressed her greatly. Rodriguez stood as Mitchell, and the younger man began gathering their materials. Sir, will we ever see Major Chen again? Mitchell paused at the door. Probably not, Sergeant. The nature of her work requires deep cover assignments that can last for years. But she wanted you to know that if you're ever in a situation where you need help that normal channels can't provide, there are people like her watching out for operators like you. After the two men left, Rodriguez sat alone in the briefing room, processing everything he had learned. The woman he had known as Dr. Sarah Chen was actually Major Sarah Chen, an elite intelligence operative who had been protecting his team while conducting her own classified mission. He thought about the moments during the firefight when she had low-crawled across open ground under enemy fire to reach Park. She hadn't been acting as a civilian contractor doing her job. She had been a fellow warrior risking her life for her teammates. The courage she had displayed took on new meaning when he realized she could have extracted herself at any time, but had chosen to stay and fight alongside them. Rodriguez also realized that Chen's tactical skills, which had seemed impressive for a civilian, were actually restrained for someone of her training level. She had been careful not to display capabilities that would have immediately revealed her true background, while still providing the protection his team needed. As he left the briefing room, Rodriguez felt a profound respect for Major Sarah Chen and the unnamed unit she served with. There were warriors operating in the shadows, conducting missions that would never be acknowledged, protecting other service members who would never know they had been in danger. 3 days later, Rodriguez was back with his SEAL team, preparing for another deployment. During their briefing, Lieutenant Commander Thompson pulled him aside. "Rodriguez, I got word that you had that meeting about Chen." Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, sir. Can't discuss the details. But our instincts were correct about her." Thompson smiled grimly. "I figured as much. You know what the strangest part is?" Rodriguez waited. "I feel safer knowing there are people like her out there, people we'll never see or know about, but who are watching our backs anyway." Rodriguez thought about Chen's parting words at Bagram, about taking care of themselves out there. At the time, he had thought it was just a medic's concern for the patients she was leaving behind. Now he understood it was a fellow operator's genuine care for the teammates she had protected. As Rodriguez checked his equipment for the upcoming mission, he carried with him the knowledge that somewhere in the world, Major Sarah Chen was conducting another classified operation, probably protecting other service members who would never know she existed. The thought was both humbling and reassuring. In the dangerous world of special operations, it was comforting to know that even the protectors had protectors. Guardian angels operating in the deepest shadows. Wounded but silent. Always ready to emerge when their fellow warriors needed them most. The mission that had started with a routine reconnaissance had ended with Rodriguez learning that the most dangerous person in their unit hadn't been any of the SEAL operators, but the quiet woman with the medical bag who had saved them all, while never revealing the true extent of her capabilities. Major Sarah Chen had been a force multiplier in ways they never could have imagined, and Rodriguez would carry that lesson with him for the rest of his military career.